I did not scream when the mortar landed. I did not scream when shrapnel opened my shoulder. But I screamed when warm water touched my frozen hand. That is the truth. The smallest basin in a crowded American field hospital brought me lower than the whole battle had. I was 19, trapped behind a curtain, certain the surgeon was preparing to cut my hand away. He kept asking my name. "Thomas Bell," I said, again and again. Maybe he wanted me awake. Maybe he wanted me to remember I was still a person. I'm 95 now, and that hand has held my wife, my children, and 6 grandchildren. One stranger made all of that possible. My name is Thomas Bell, Tommy to the men who knew me before my hair went white. I served with 41 Independent Commando, Royal Marines, attached to the Americans in Korea. I do not tell this story because I think I was a hero. I carried ammunition. I followed orders. When fear came, I felt it like everyone else. But I need to tell you this before it is too late. People see an old man's hand and think it is just an old hand. They do not see Captain Daniel Mercer bending over it while guns shook the tent. They do not see my mate Billy Evans wrapping his own scarf around my wrist. They do not hear me promising God things I never managed to keep. Memory is strange. I forgot what I ate yesterday, but I remember the smell of that hospital. Iodine, wet canvas, diesel, and scorched wool. To understand why that surgeon mattered, you need to know who I was before Korea made me old at 19. I grew up near Portsmouth, in a narrow house where the wind found every crack. My father repaired fishing boats. My mother, Elsie, washed other people's laundry and sang while she worked. We were not poor in the way people describe poverty now. We simply counted everything. Coal, bread, pennies. Nothing was wasted. My hands were useful early. I held nails for father, patched nets, peeled potatoes, and carried buckets. He used to say, "A man's hands tell the truth before his mouth does." I joined the Royal Marines because I wanted regular pay and a uniform mother could be proud of. I also wanted to see the world. That sounds foolish now. The world I saw was mostly gray water, frozen hills, and frightened young men pretending not to be frightened. Billy Evans trained beside me. He came from Cardiff, laughed with his whole body, and could sleep anywhere. On the voyage east, he told me he would open a bicycle shop after service. I said I would work with father. We made plans because young men believe plans are promises. By November 1950, we were moving through North Korea with American units. The cold arrived like an enemy that never slept. Oil thickened, metal burned bare skin. Water bottles became solid. Then orders came for us to help open the road near Chosin. On December 3rd, just after 2 in the morning, we moved along a narrow road outside Hagaru-ri. Snow squeaked beneath our boots. That sound still bothers me. It was too clean for what was waiting. Billy walked behind me carrying extra Bren magazines. Sergeant Cole moved ahead, one hand raised. Nobody talked. Our breath hung around us, pale as cigarette smoke. Then the ridge flashed. Machine gun fire cut across the road. Mortars followed. The first explosion threw snow, stones, and a man's helmet into the air. We dropped into a ditch so hard my teeth struck together. "Tommy, ammunition!" Cole shouted. I crawled toward him, dragging the magazine pouch. Bullets clipped frozen branches above me. They made a flat, cracking sound like boards breaking in another room. I remember thinking how ordinary that sound was. A mortar landed behind us. Something hit my shoulder and spun me around. I felt warmth under my jacket, but my arm still moved. Billy reached me and pressed his scarf against the wound. "You keep that," he said. "I never liked the color." Even then, he could joke. We stayed in that ditch until daylight, firing when shapes moved on the ridge. The cold worked quietly. That was its cruelty. My right glove was wet from snow and blood. I kept gripping the rifle because letting go felt more dangerous than freezing. By afternoon, 2 fingers would not bend. By night, I could not feel any of them. We were ordered back toward the perimeter with several wounded Americans. One was a radio operator named Luis Ortega. He had a broken ankle and kept apologizing for slowing us down. Billy and I lifted him between us. Halfway down the road, flares opened above the valley. White light, black shadows, more firing. Billy stumbled. When I turned, he was on his knees, staring at a dark patch spreading across his chest. I lowered Ortega behind a burned truck and crawled back. Billy tried to speak, but only air came out. I pressed my left hand over the wound. My right hand was still locked around the rifle sling, stiff as a piece of wood. "Bicycle shop," I told him. "Remember?" He looked at me, then he gave the smallest nod. Sergeant Cole shouted that we had to move. Firing was walking toward us from the ridge. Ortega was calling my name. Billy gripped my sleeve with strength. "Take him," he whispered. I said no. He pulled me closer. "Take him, Tommy." So I did. Cole and another Marine came back for Billy while I hauled Ortega onto my shoulders. My wounded shoulder screamed. My frozen hand would not hold him, so I hooked my wrist beneath his belt and staggered downhill. 10 steps, rest. 10 steps, rest. Mortars struck behind us. Ortega prayed in Spanish. I counted in English. Neither of us sounded brave. We reached the perimeter near dawn. Cole arrived later with Billy wrapped in a poncho. I knew before he shook his head. Then a medic saw my hand. He cut away the glove. Skin came with it. The fingers underneath were gray, swollen, and split along the knuckles. He tagged me for evacuation and pushed me onto a truck crowded with wounded men. At the field hospital, Captain Mercer examined my hand beneath a yellow lamp. He asked when I had last felt my fingers. I could not answer. He reached for a surgical saw. I panicked. "Please don't take it, sir." Mercer looked exhausted. There was dried blood on his collar. "The saw is for the splint," he said, "not you." He cut a plaster support, then ordered slow warming. No rubbing, no sudden heat. He injected medicine near my wrist and opened the tightest dead skin so swelling would not crush what circulation remained. Pain arrived like fire, poured through every finger. I screamed and tried to pull away. Mercer held my arm. "Stay with me, Thomas. Pain means the hand is living." For 10 minutes I hated him. For the rest of my life I thanked him. I spent 6 weeks in hospitals, first in Korea, then Japan. 2 fingertips were trimmed away, but the hand remained. Mercer visited once before I was flown out. He placed a pencil between my thumb and first finger. "Write something," he said. I wrote M-U-M. The letters were crooked and weak. They were the finest letters I had ever made. I asked him why he had worked so hard when other men were worse. He said, "Because you were on my table." That answer stayed with me. No speech, no medal, just duty toward the person in front of him. Ortega survived. Years later, a Christmas card reached me from Texas. Inside was a photograph of him standing beside 3 children. On the back he wrote, "These are here because you carried me." I kept that card beside Billy's old scarf. I went home in 1951. Father gave me lighter work until my grip returned. I married Margaret, held our first daughter with that saved hand, and eventually repaired boats beside him. Captain Mercer never saw any of that. Billy never did either. That is the part of survival nobody prepares you for. Gratitude and grief live in the same room, and neither one ever moves out. At 95, I have learned that a life can turn on 10 minutes. 10 minutes a tired surgeon chose to spend. 10 steps a frightened lad kept taking. 1 sentence from a dying friend. Take him. We imagine courage feels strong. Mine did not. Mine felt cold, sick, and unsure. I simply moved while part of me wanted to lie down. Maybe you are facing something now that feels too heavy. Do not ask whether you feel brave. Ask who is in front of you. Ask what can be done in the next 10 minutes. Use the hand you still have. Make the call. Hold the door. Sit beside the bed. Carry someone 10 more steps. And remember the quiet people who save pieces of your life without ever seeing what those pieces became. I have signed birthday cards, repaired boats, buried friends, and held grandchildren with this hand. Every time it closes, slowly and stubbornly, I hear Captain Mercer again. Pain means the hand is living.